On this week's show, the Georgia Southern Eagles with a heartbreaking 1-point loss on the road at Arkansas State. We'll show you highlights and have some post-game reaction from Coach Summers and break down how things went and what's up for the future for Georgia Southern. All that and more as we welcome you inside the Eagles Nest. And welcome inside the Eagles Nest. I'm your host, Josh Aubrey, being joined by Mike Anthony, sports editor and Georgia Southern beat writer for the Statesboro Herald. And Mike, neither of us made the trip. We both were able or unfortunately watched the game. It was, I wouldn't say one for the ages, but it was one that's definitely going to stick in your mind for a while about how many what could have beens and how easily Georgia Southern could be 3-0 right now in the conference, and people could be, you know, they still may not be happy, but a victory was just taken away. You had 5 turnovers. We could go on and on about everything, and we probably will talk about quite a bit because it seems like just about every aspect there were some issues, except maybe Younghoe Koo, who was solid, had 4 field goals. But your thoughts, let's start off just generic, your thoughts on the game.
Well, you mentioned the game being taken away. I don't think it was so much taken away by Arkansas State as Georgia Southern refused to take a game that was repeatedly being given to it. 5 takeaways for Georgia Southern, no giveaways for the offense. A big improvement over what we saw 10 days ago at Western Michigan. You figure a line like that, it's got to work out well for Georgia Southern, but they are not able to take advantage of it. Just 3 points out of those 5 turnovers. We talked about how they were a talented team, maybe a dangerous team licking its wounds after a bad start. They played one of their worst games of the season, but when you let a team hang around, they look up, they have a chance to win the game, and that's exactly what they did.
Well, they may have played the sloppiest game of the season. I don't know if it was the worst because they did put up over 500 yards of offense. They put up over 300, had 2 running backs go over 100 yards. One of those guys, 100 yards, would have been more than they've averaged all season because they've only averaged 80 yards a game on the ground. So not only does Georgia Southern's offense struggle when they needed some points or some, at least pick up a first down there in the fourth quarter when they went, I believe it was -9.
-9 for the fourth quarter.
In the fourth quarter rushing. I mean, that's unheard of at Georgia Southern. You throw on top of that the defense giving up 500 and a huge 4th and 16 where they let not a very mobile quarterback go and rush for the first down on that play. Let's start with the offense. The positives. Kevin Ellison threw the ball pretty well for most of the game. They were very high completion rate, maybe not deep balls. Had a couple of big plays on offense that we haven't seen all year, but then you can't get away from the fact that when you needed to run the ball, you weren't able to do that.
Right. As far as the passing goes, it's exactly what we were expecting, what we were hoping for all throughout the offseason when this team talked about improving the passing. No one was talking about throwing it 40 times for 500 yards and getting all your points that way. That's what Kevin Ellison was able to do on Wednesday night, over 200 yards of passing for the Eagles. More importantly, they converted some big third downs. They got some big plays in open spaces to their athletic receivers. It's exactly what you wanted the offense to do in the passing game, but as you mentioned, the running game just not picking up its portion.
All right, now let's switch it over to defense. And on the defensive side of the ball, there were some turnovers. I don't know how many of those were created and how many were right place at the right time because the Red Wolves were really throwing the ball around, carelessly dropping the ball. They had 5 fumbles, recovered 2, gave up 3. Defensively, though, Georgia Southern, 500 yards. It's hard to get over that, and over 350 rushing against a team that wasn't known for rushing the ball.
Yeah, this is a team that seemed determined to fix its mistakes from the Western Michigan game. As far as pass coverage went, they did a better job of eliminating deep balls. They kept other routes underneath. As you said, were able to force a couple fumbles, even if Arkansas State did a lot of the work by themselves in that regard. But it left them open to the running game, and so many times Arkansas State just able to turn the corner, hit the line of scrimmage without having to make any extra moves, without having to break any tackles. That's what Georgia Southern wasn't able to do. Georgia Southern probably the better stable of running backs, but they spent the entire night trying to make moves, break tackles just to get to a gain of none, whereas Arkansas State able to turn that corner, get ahead of speed, and after that able to make some moves in open space and make the Georgia Southern tackling look pretty suspect.
All right, so you see the problems on offense, the problems on defense. Now we have to bring up the coaching. Does this fall on the players? Does it fall on the coaches? Because most of the time the coaches tend to get very defensive of don't blame the players. I didn't see a lot of taking responsibility necessarily after the game, at least in the limited post that I saw. It was more, we got to get the job done, but there wasn't anything specifically. Do you think these issues are maybe some coaching related? Because it seems like Georgia Southern has a lot of talent there on the field.
There is a lot of talent, and it's hard to criticize coaching, at least as far as I'm concerned, because it involves too many X's and O's, and I just don't know what the X's and O's are. I couldn't tell you how the blocks are supposed to go. I couldn't tell you where the hole's supposed to be. So I'm not going to sit there and say you should have run this play instead of that play. What I will say is that until the wins start coming in and start being a little bit more, I guess you could say, decisive, there does seem to be a confidence issue with the team. In the fourth quarter, you've got a 2-score lead, and it still looked like the Eagles were tiptoeing around a little bit, just trying to get out of there with a win. There were more than one or two occasions where they really could have used one more big play to just put their foot down, put the game away. That never seemed to come. And like I said, Arkansas State, nowhere near the team they've been the last couple of years, but you let any team hang around that long, knowing how poorly they played or how many opportunities they gave you, and watch you not take advantage. When they get their chance in the final minutes, they do take advantage and they win.
All right, well, let's get out and take a look at some of the highlights, the way things went, and also hear from head coach Tyson Summers. Georgia Southern on the road at winless Arkansas State for a rare Wednesday night game. First half action, the Eagle defense stepping up. Ironhead Gallen with the hit here. On offense, something we haven't seen all year long, a long touchdown run, the longest of the season. 61 yards here by L.A. Ramsby, and the Eagles with the early lead. Arkansas State getting down into the red zone, but the Eagle defense able to come up with the big play. Joshua Moon, the interception. The Eagle offense getting close, but they'd have to settle for this Younghoe Koo field goal to make it 10-3 Georgia Southern. Later, the Red Wolves pinned deep, and Chris Delarosa with the stop, but they'd eventually march downfield and cap a 97-yard drive with this Justin Hansen pass to Justin McGinnis. We're tied at 10-all. The Eagles trying to answer before the half. Kevin Ellison to B.J. Johnson. Ellison 14 of 22 for 203 yards. The two would hook up a little bit later. Nice grab. That would lead to Younghoe Koo from 53 yards out, and Georgia Southern takes a 13-10 halftime lead. Second half, Ellison dumps it to Miles Campbell, who'd finished with a career-best 98 yards receiving. Next, Ellison back to pass, and he'll find Monte Crockett for a first down. But once again, the Eagles have to settle for a Koo field goal as they can't get in the end zone, and it's 16-10. But while the red zone was a problem, the Eagles did score on a couple of big plays for a change. This time it's Miles Campbell breaking free, going 63 yards, getting some nice blocks and making a few good moves himself along the way. The Eagles extend the lead to 23-10. But the Red Wolves quickly respond. The handoff to Warren Wand, and he's gone 55 yards for the touchdown. Arkansas State rushed for 343 yards in the game and had two players over 100. The Eagle offense right back, though. Ellison to Johnson for another first down. The Eagles have to call on Younghoe Koo again. His fourth field goal of the game makes it 26-17, a two-score lead, and it looked as though the Eagle defense would help put the game away. This interception, the fifth Red Wolf turnover of the game, but Arkansas State comes back, gets a field goal, then holds the Eagle offense, then hits a pass from Hanson for a big first down. Finally, 9 seconds remaining in the game. Hanson to Omar Bales. Coach Summers tries to ice the kicker with 2 timeouts, but the extra point would be good, and the Eagles fall 27-26.
I just told them, again, I think that they played hard, and I certainly know that they wanted to win the game. But at the end of the day, you can look at. I haven't had a chance to finish up with the stats yet, but you look at it, we don't have enough touchdowns. We're sitting there, we got opportunities in the red zone, and we wind up having to kick field goals. We don't have enough points off of takeaways. And in the second half defensively, we've got a number of opportunities to sit there and get stops, and we don't do it. In the first half, offensively, I don't think we converted on a single third down, and those are rough things. We sit there in the first half and give ourselves a little bit of a chance, big run, long run by LA, turn around and have the lead again, get it to two different series. And, we don't play very well the last 2 series on defense. And, again, unfortunately, we go out there and have an injury or two, and then we don't make the plays when we got to make them, and that's what it winds up being. We can make up our minds. We can go one of 2 ways. We can sit here and be 3-2 and 2-1 in conference play, and we can turn it around and we can continue to get better and we can continue to try to improve off of it, or we can find a way to point fingers at each other. We can find a way for all the work to not matter and turn negative at the first sign of adversity. But that's not what I want to do. That's not what I expect us to do. There's certainly not a lack of want to or trying. There's certainly a lack of us playing with some discipline and us finding a way to win in the last play tonight. Well, I mean, they certainly took away the run game and forced us to try to run the ball up inside and in the middle, and we weren't able to do that with any effectiveness, and so we had to start giving ourselves an opportunity trying to open it up on the edges and by throwing the ball, and we had some success doing that, certainly. But that's, it's not what we are. It's not what we want to be. And until we're able to get some push and be able to run the ball up inside with any amount of success, then we're going to, it is what it is. And we couldn't do it tonight. We were able to throw the ball tonight with some efficiency and had enough big plays and big runs in there to help us, but it didn't go the way we wanted to.
Hey, Miss Thompson, everything's fine. It's going to be no problem. I'll have you done in a few minutes.
My name is Paisley Nordhoff, part owner of Complete Car Care, and I want you to come see me.
Well, Mike, it's an unfortunate loss. Obviously, we both have a rooting interest in seeing Georgia Southern do well, because when they do well, people watch our shows, people read the paper and things like that. Right now, it seems to be, it's still soon after the game, but it seems that the sentiment has been, social media-wise, message boards-wise, people are very, very upset. And I think a lot of people remember the 2006 season. Not to say that that's the way this is going to roll, but this is where people mindsets are, the 2006 season, or maybe even 2009, where our offense really struggled and there were some issues, and there was a lot of some staff members that were there then and they're there now. And I think people are very concerned. What's your take on where Georgia Southern is right now, and what do you think they either need to do or will happen in the future?
Well, I think the main source of frustration comes from a fan base that sees so many familiar faces on offense and defense that have been there 2 and 3, and now some of them playing for their 4th consecutive year. A team that ran through the Sun Belt once, that was competitive again last year, that won a bowl game. They're seeing these same guys taking steps backwards, it seems, at least in the statistical departments, in the win-loss department. So that's got to be eating at a lot of Georgia Southern fans right now. When you look at guys like Matt Breida, who has as many yards for the season right now as he did in some games the last couple of years, it's just really easy to get worked up. And the worst part seems to be that you talk about improving from one game to the next, get better. Georgia Southern just doesn't seem to be doing that. That could be in part because of the schedule's getting tougher along with any improvements that they may be making. But the bottom line is Georgia Southern had a chance to go 3-0, be sitting at the top of the Sun Belt, really control their own destiny. Now that's out the window. The games only get tougher. Another long week, a lot of time to prepare, and a non-conference game. But if you can't make those strides, do something positive, get a little confidence. Hard to say how the rest of the conference season plays out.
Yeah, a lot of head scratching going on. I think a lot of people saw a defensive-minded guy coming in. Our personnel seemed to be in place that Georgia Southern should be a better defensive team maybe than they were last year. You never know with schemes and like you said, behind the scenes, we don't know what they're drawing up. Maybe it's drawn up. It's drawn up well, and the execution's not there. We just don't know. Offensively, we weren't sure because we knew that there was going to be at least a little bit of a transition of what they might be wanting to do compared to what they've done in the past, because it didn't seem like we were bringing in guys who were real triple option guys. Fritz wasn't either, and I think you also have to kind of go back to this. There's a lot of questions about the offensive line. When Coach Fritz took over, I do believe that was the question mark again, was there wasn't a lot of returnees on the offensive line, and what were they going to do? And then they turned it around and did really well. So I think right now 3-2 is not a bad place to be. I don't know that 3-2, if you would have said before the season after 5 games, if people would have been panicking. But I think it's just how they lost this last game. You've got Georgia Tech coming up next week, and a very much improved New Mexico State on the road the following week. What do you think they need to do to kind of calm things down right now?
Well, it's simple. They just need to play a better game and win. And I know that that's a lot more complicated than it is to say, but it's important to remember that as worked up as everybody can get after one pretty bad game, I guess you can say last night, it doesn't matter that they were winning the majority of the night. They had so many chances to make that a runaway victory, and instead they aren't able to hang on. But one good game, it's amazing what that can do to create short-term memories. If you go out there and get a win over Georgia Tech, there's going to be a lot more sunshine and rainbows out there. So it's easy to be really down after a game, especially less than 24 hours out. At the same time, the positives have to come. Otherwise, the negatives keep on piling up. And as I mentioned earlier, I think it's a confidence issue. If you don't have confidence, it's hard to do anything even when you do have the talent.
All right, well, as for the other sports going on right now, we've got the weather coming in from the hurricane, and a lot of things have been canceled. Give us an update on how things go.
Well, Georgia Southern closed down on Thursday morning at 10 a.m., so no operations going on as far as anything on campus. Still a couple of soccer games scheduled off campus going a little farther north. Hopefully they got out before the traffic, but both the men and the women playing at Georgia State. Hopefully they can get those games in. The Georgia Southern women's team already a good portion of the way through their conference schedule. The guys at 1-1-1, they're sitting right where they need to be. It would be big if they could get a win at Georgia State, one of the better programs on the men's side of things. So a chance to do some damage on the road against a rival. Hopefully they'll come back to a sunnier and drier Statesboro.
All right. Well, hopefully it'll be sunnier, and as far
both
as the
metaphorically and
there you
atmospherically.
go. We'd like to see that next week. Georgia Tech coming up for the next game. We'll preview that for you next week and have interviews with Coach Summers and the players as well. Till then, for Mike Anthony, I'm Josh Aubrey. Thanks for joining us, and hope to see you again next week.